This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. Just as a follow-up from last week's episode, I mentioned that I was recording that in the hospital, and I have been released, and while I was there, they did a heart catheterization and took a look to see what can be adjusted, and with my medications they have, and so everything is fine. My ticker is fine. Hopefully I get another 70 or 80 years, I hope. So anyhow, I seem to be back in normal sinus rhythm and things are going well. So thank you so very much. So many of you who have called or sent texts or emails or have posted things on social media wishing me well. And so they worked very well, and they have not gone unanswered. So thank you very much. Well, anyhow, I'm moving on, and this week's episode is something that is kind of funny because I had an episode that I had recorded for the Dodd Vickers podcast back when I was doing this with him, and this is with Christopher Hart, and Chris happened to be in Houston, and we were working together for a project at the museum, and that was for like about a month or so, and we go into that. We talk a little bit about that, so I don't want to spend too much time here discussing that, but I do want to mention that I was recording this while we were at the SAM convention, the Society of American Magicians convention in Appleton, Wisconsin earlier this year. And I know that there are a variety of people who have some different interests, some of different ages and backgrounds, certainly, who have not necessarily heard of the Addams Family of movies, nor know anything about his participation in Bing Thing, and there are many other people who do know something about it. So anyhow, we do spend a little bit of time talking about that today. He said here that there were many podcasts he's done in the past that have been just on movies, but he hasn't done many with magic. So there were a lot of things that he had talked about in his lecture that he was able to expand upon during this episode while we were continuing to chat. So those of you who were at the convention and attended his lecture can kind of listen to this as a supplement to his lecture. For those who didn't attend, which is majority of you I know, of course, and so you will be getting a lot out of this too. It wasn't like he picked up where he had left off, but he does mention a lot of good ideas, tips, and advice for working with torn restored newspapers and also Zombie. And again, talking about his history in the movies. So it's a fascinating conversation with a longtime good friend. So please welcome my good friend this week, Mr. Christopher Hart, here on The Magic Word. Today I am settling something that has been, again, long overdue. I've had a lot of friends who have been on the podcast in the past that I keep saying, it's finally your turn. We finally get together after all this time. And this is certainly someone that goes into that, because before I actually started working with podcasts, and I was working with Dodd Vickers and the Magic Newswire, and some years ago in Houston, we had a thing called the Science of Magic that the museum had put on. And Scott Servine was the one who was producing that, and had Christopher Hart and John Carney, and I'd forgotten a couple of other guys who had come out from LA who were performing, and then they had some of us local guys, and so that went on for the whole summer. The point is that I got to know our guest today then, and he came over to the house a time or two, and we had recorded some things actually for Dodd way back then. Well, later, now I've got my own thing. It's kind of like, hey, we really haven't sat down and chatted, quite properly. We've been friends for so long, and I see him everywhere, and you do too, because you know him perhaps without seeing his face as the thing, because it has been his hand that has been the thing that was in the original Addams Family. How many movies? Two movies?
Two with Paramount that were theatrical releases, and a direct-to-video by Saban that did direct-to-video.
All right. So his hand has been out there, plus he has been performing around the world with an absolutely beautiful act, one of the more creative guys. And also, I think it's fascinating that he had worked with Bill Arnold for a few years in Triple Espresso. And I had worked with Bill way back when at the Magic Island in Houston, when I got to know him. And then later he had written this play. We'll talk a little bit about that then. But the different nuances and touches that Chris has on the zombie and on the newspaper terror, he has spent hundreds of hours researching and doing this, and in this freely giving away all this great information. So if you get a chance to see his lecture, you need to, or buy his DVD, or however that you can get to see it. I'm sure it's available someplace online. But enough about that. I'm just going to introduce him right now. Here's my friend, Christopher Hart. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Scott. I'm happy to be here. As you gave this eloquent introduction, kind introduction to me, I'm realizing I've known you a long time, and I go, and who wants to hear about Christopher Hart anymore? But I've become an old man from being this with you in a long time, that there's a whole new generation that doesn't know who the hell I am. So that's who we're talking to, the 10-year-old that doesn't know who the hell Christopher Hart is.
That's right. Most people who are, and there's some people, of course, who do know you, who don't know the details. For an example, we are recording this right now at the Society of American Magicians National Convention. This is in Appleton, and you had lectured yesterday and showed a little bit of snippets of film of what you're performing as the thing. And when people are raising their hands, how many people have not seen this? And so there are several people who might have heard of it but haven't seen it, but particularly the behind the scenes, like the prosthetics, and that you wouldn't think you have to be in makeup for how many hours, you said?
2 hours every day for makeup, because they applied a prosthetic and blended the edge for a hand. Right. So, I mean, yes, it's for a hand, because they just think that, it's a CGI effect, the hand's crawling around, it's easy. But they apply a prosthetic stump. That's no different than, when someone's doing a horror movie or something. They're making up their face. It's much more elaborate than that, but it's the same techniques. But yeah, we can go down all those rabbit holes. There's so many things, but I am at the SAM. I'm always thankful for the SAM. We can talk about this at some point or now.
The SAM. You started with the SAM. The first convention at Hank Morehouse, you said?
Well, but before that, I dabbled in coin collecting and stamp collecting as a 9-year-old kid, and got bored really quick. So when I discovered magic through some books and seeing a magician on TV, that intrigued me, but I didn't know how to keep it going. It kind of petered out for me because I didn't have any resources. But a friend of mine found and joined this club, and he said, hey, we should go to this magic club. And it was sponsored by the Society of American Magicians. It was 1313E, an explorer post for magic. And they met at the Hall of Fame museum that was in the basement of a bank building on Sunset and Vine. Anyway, the point is this. That gave me such an amazing foundation in magic. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be a magician. I talked about it in my lecture. So I shout out to the SAM. I was a member of Assembly 22, and I would work backstage and met Jack Goldfinger come in, and all these great professionals for the SAM conventions. The first one I went to was in Pasadena. As a kid, just, apprentice trying to help backstage. So SAM has got a good place in my heart for my magic career. So, which is one of the reasons that you had come to this convention. But you have been doing a few magic conventions around, and you've done Blackpool. You've been to Blackpool, haven't you? It's been long gaps between some of these conventions. So like Blackpool, I've done Blackpool maybe 3 times in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. Back early on when it was Derek Lever, and that was like my early days of my act. Yeah. And then 10 years went by, and then I got booked again or something. So there are always new updates, I guess, that you're always doing. I mean, is that true that you're always kind of tweaking your act, or once you got it, the timing and everything's perfect, or? Well, this is an interesting discussion too, to bring that up, in the sense that I made my goal when I was young, just in an enterprising magician with a dream, was to work Las Vegas and review shows. That was my, Johnny Thompson's and Norm Nielsen's and Marvin Roy's. So that was my goal, and I achieved that for a little bit, dipped my toe in that world. And then Vegas, over the past years, I used to work Vegas 4 or 5 times a year, opening for Mason Jonathan, 7-month contracts at Caesar's Magical Empire, which was kind of consulted with Milt Larson. It's pretty amazing time. So that was a great time. That was one of the highlights of my life. I filled in for Lance Burton at Tropicana, Folies Bergère. That was a huge accomplishment for me, goal that I achieved. And then they recently imploded the Tropicana. So it's
Yes.
sort of sad that the old Vegas is going away, but it's like anything in life that changes. And so these hotels that don't exist. So now people are calling me up for work, but I tell you what they want. It's not necessarily my act, which is always good to have my act. I work, anywhere with that act, but it's a 12-minute act music. So now everybody's got a platform at the end of a bar or a restaurant, and they want 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I just did the Magic Castle in the Peller Theater, which normally they work with 2 people, but the new business owners running it, they changed it to where it's 1 guy. So I had to do 30 minutes. And it was great. The first night, actually, because I didn't know how long I was going to do, I had plenty of material, but I did 40 minutes, so I cut it down to 30. And the castle's great for honing new material, 3 shows a night.
Yeah.
So
back to back, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is, I'm reinventing who I am now at my age, and material, and doing more talk material. And so I tell all the young people, I always think that I've skipped over the painful period of creation, right? That I tell the juniors, I was a trustee. There's a lot of things we can talk about.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're on the board of trustees and chairman.
Yeah, well, I was. I just termed out after 8 years, but I oversaw the junior program at the Magic Castle, and I was a junior magician there, and so it was great to give back and oversee that program, and it's been stronger than it's ever been in its history. But I always tell the juniors, I said, hey, you got to go out there and be bad and fall on your face, and that's how you get good. And lately I've been having to drink my own medicine, which is to go out there with, now, being in magic a long time, maybe it's a little quicker for my choices are a little bit better because I'm more educated, but I still have to go out there with unknown answers. You can only learn it from the audience. Oh, they laughed at this. They didn't think this was funny. Oh, why didn't this play? And then my friends come to see the show, Jonathan Levitz and close friends of mine who are also trustees, and Mike Caveney's, and then they give me feedback. Sure. And so it's a constant process of learning.
Yeah, continue to learn. It's interesting, too, because you had mentioned in your lecture about how that you have a fear of singing, and so I assume that has something to do also a little bit of a fear of public speaking. And so I would, do you like doing the silent act better than trying to come up and work with speaking and talking with the audience, or do you like both equally, or do you feel comfortable now? Or that's something you grew into, I think. Yeah. Because I see you as a silent guy, you're like Mr. Electric, work in the world with just an act that doesn't talk, but everybody loves.
Right. Well, there's a lot of spokes to that question, which is interesting. I'll say that because when I had to do a little performance for the SAM little Explorer post, right? And I was terrified. My shirt was drenched in sweat. But here's what I say to answer that question. One phase of that question is my love of magic is just a tick higher than my fear of talking. Like my love of magic, because magic is a performance art form. So if I wanted to do magic and learn magic, I was forced, I had to be in front of people. But normally that's not a natural, some people are natural outgoing performers, actors or singers, that comes naturally. I'm not, I'm very introverted. And there's a lot of professional actors and even great actors that are like that. They're kind of shy and introverted, but they love acting, and when they have that role, that they can absorb into. So with that said, but I will say that magic is a great medium. I see it in the junior program, where there's these terrified kids, but magic forces you to perform, and it does. Even if that's not what you do for the rest of your life, it does bring out something to give a little more confidence and perform. So I grew with that, and so when you say about the silent act, what I discovered at some point when I was trying to figure out how to be a magician, I suddenly realized that, if I work silently to music, which was also what I loved, it was the theatricality of it. But I realized that, I can open up, my market's not my local city, it's the world. I can travel around the world because magic is beautifully as an international language. If you're doing it to music, you can work anywhere. And that opened up a huge market for me, and I performed around the world. And then with the movies coming out, now it was even a double whammy because now the movie would appear in France or Germany, and I would go there and do a talk show and also get to do my act because I had this pink glove that crawled around that was kind of related. So,
Yeah, that made perfect sense because for those who were familiar with you, or you were introduced as being the thing and they knew about the hand, and then when the hand started coming alive in your act, I mean, it wasn't just a floating ball, you know?
Well, yeah, and people, a question I'm often asked is, they think I created that pink floating glove after I did the movie. And actually, I went into the audition, and I don't know if the producers even looked at it, but I gave them a videotape for the Addams Family. I gave them a videotape. It was a very beginning stages of that routine. It was very crude, but I actually had performed it at the castle, and I gave them a videotape. And so it just was, now that I'm older, I start to get a little more philosophical about my life because I see that these windows of opportunity, I think it's true for anybody's life. These windows of opportunity happen when they're supposed to happen, and then they can close. So I worked at Hollywood Magic Shop and worked there 6 days a week and paid my bills and my first apartment in Hollywood and living on my own, and then met David Copperfield and worked for him and the Magic Castle. And now Hollywood Magic's closed down, and so that's gone away. So Triple Espresso was a huge resource. It was a play that my friend Bill Arnold wrote. And I met him doing a comedy club, Acme Comedy Club in, actually it was called the Rib Tickler. Now it's called Acme. But at the time it was called the Rib Tickler, Dave Wood's Rib Tickler. And I performed, and he was the resident host. And we hit it off, became friends.
Were you doing a comedy act at that time, or were you doing your silent act?
No, I was doing my silent act. And and it's funny because another great magician friend, Derek Hughes, was a young Minneapolis magician. And he said he would tell me when we became friends, he said, my mom brought me to see you there. I was so amazing. You were incredible. And I said, oh my God, Derek, I said, I was sweating flop sweat because it was a little platform, designed for a comedy club that I'm doing my silent act in with people all around me. But it made me stronger. I figured out how to adapt the angles and got to be friends with Bill Arnold. And then years later, he calls me up and says, I'm doing a play in Coronado Island in San Diego. You want to come see it? I go, yeah, I'll come down. So I drove 2 hours to see him. And then he says after the show, it was a great comedy show, and he says, hey, would you want to do something like this? I go, I'm not an actor. I can't do that. He said, I'm not an actor too, but you could do this. And I go, really? Okay. So it took a year because I had bookings. And then Scott Servine, who was a good friend of mine, he did it a lot in San Diego. And then he was getting busy, and he said, you should do this and we can split the time. And I
acquiesced.
I acquiesced and met with the director, and I had to sing and terrifying. And I think everybody has a fear of public speaking. And the thing about acting is,
and you've never really been in a play before like that.
No.
I mean, you didn't have a theater background.
No, none of that. I mean, here's the thing. I was always had a love of movies and film. Like I'd watch the old black and white, that's entertainment shows. And my father couldn't afford, I wanted to go to college and I would have taken film and television. And my father they were going to move to Seattle for a new job opportunity, and he couldn't afford to send me to college, and I couldn't afford to pay for it. So I moved out to Hollywood on my own. And in a way, it's fateful. Like that was the draw of my cards. And now I'm working in a magic shop, and I go, well, hey, I'm going to put a magic act together. And hey, now, I've got to be on my own now. It kind of gave me an opportunity otherwise I would have taken film and television, and
who knows? And
maybe I would have been a multimillionaire producing, Friends or something. It's like, who knows? But yeah. So what's my point about all that? I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, Scott Servine. Oh yeah, and the play. So doing the play, and that again was terrifying. Going out there and having to sing, but I overcame it and got better at it. And then the singing show called me up and said, we're looking for somebody who can't sing. And it kept haunting me, almost like a bad dream, this thing. And then when I took this Fox TV show, which was a competition show, like a game show, weird kind of hybrid, where they have to guess who the best singer is. Anyway, so I was a bad singer that they had to ferret out.
You had to compare a bad singer with a good singer?
Correct. They had to just, people were lip syncing, and they just had to guess by their performance if they were good or bad. And so, but what it did, I decided in my head, now it took me my whole life to get to this point and just the draw of the cards, but I said, okay, this is going to finally put it to bed, my fear of singing even badly. I was on millions of viewers on a Fox television show, national TV show, on TV, singing badly, exposing myself. And that's sort of like that kind of killed that fear in me. Like I overcame it. It was a monster. I still can't sing, and I don't want to be a singer, but the fear of doing that.
Well, as you said, the worst that can happen to people are going to be saying, "Oh, there's that guy who can't sing," when you see him in the street. But that really didn't happen.
Nobody is impossible. Like it was ridiculous in my head that I thought people would recognize me the next day.
I remember Darren Brown saying one time about how that when he was fearful of coming out as being gay, and he said, because I don't know what people would think about it, but once I did, he said, I realized they don't think about it. They don't think about me. So it's like, no big deal, you know. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's like, just try it. Just go out and do it.
Right.
And you did, and were successful. And how many years were you with Triple Espresso?
Oh, yeah. So that was a blessing because, I started, when did I start that? My late 30s.
Because they had different troops that went around the country, right?
Yeah, well, it originated in Minneapolis, and then I would go in and I would fill in there. I would train there for a couple weeks, and then I would fill in once in a while when Bill Arnold, maybe during Christmastide had shows or was doing other things. So I would fill in for him. And then they put it in San Diego, right. And then I did it regularly there. It was great. I would travel doing my magic act, and I'd come back and get to drive to San Diego. It was beautiful down there, and work on my acting chops. The thing about being an actor that I learned was that as a magician, you're holding a prop. Hey, pick a card. Here's a piece of rope. So you have something to fall back. You're
holding something.
You're doing something, right?
Yeah.
So as a director, I said to the director, as an actor, you just have your words. You have props. I did do a magic act in there. That was part of it. They hired a magician to play a magic role, but I had 2 magic performances, and everything else was acting and interacting with the other actors as the scenes of the play evolved. But I said to the director, I said, what do I do with my hands? And he kind of chuckled, because as a magician, I had no props. I go, well, what am I supposed to do? What do I put? And so he just, just be in the moment, and they'll do what they do. And I, in the beginning, it was like a magic act. I put my hands in my pocket for a line, and then I crossed my arms for a line, and it was very regimented. It just gave me a feeling of security, like a magic act, knowing that I was going to be at this place at this time. And,
right.
And then slowly, as I became a better performer and in the moment, sometimes they repeated the same things as it was right for the moment, but I became more relaxed, and I think it helped me as a magician, because now I'm performing, interacting with an audience without props. I didn't rely on the magic to sell myself. It was trying to convey my emotional state, right? Mm-hmm. What does this character want, So I learned a lot. All these things were great learning. So when you put yourself in situations that are challenging, you do come away with growth.
When you had developed the personality for the hand, it was amazing. Because when you're talking about things that you've learned, I guess there were things as you were probably in the moment of thinking, okay, well, he's going to slide. Or, if you were a human person, it would do this or that. And so the hand would react just like a human would. And so that was brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I will say that I try to make it interesting. It's challenging because it is just a hand, but I did do a lot of work.
With no eyes.
Well, it's with no eyes, right? Because the eyes are the mirror to the soul. If you, as I've talked about in podcasts, like for movie stuff, you see a Disney animation Cars, for instance, the headlights become the eyes, or the candlestick on Beauty and the Beast. Those always are the soul of the character, the eyes. So the hand doesn't have an eye. So then I had to relate it to, okay, well, all I can do is convey movement. And I really thought about people like Charlie Chaplin, who was silent film star, who would slide around a corner, or Buster Keaton bouncing off a wall or something falling on him. So I used those attributes, a creepy spider, a happy, excited puppy dog when you come home from work, to see you bouncing into the wall because the thing's running too fast. Because the script would just say, thing runs to the door, scampers across the street. That was the only direction.
So it was all up to you.
So it was all up to me.
Wow.
And I knew it had to have a because I loved the TV series. It had to have a personality. It was it was a character. And that was sort of my goal and challenge, because I would shoot a lot of, they call second unit. Sometimes, anytime I saw with Raul Julia or Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd, I was in those scenes with the Barry Sonnenfeld, who was the main director. But then a lot of the close-ups, they had a second unit. So they could be filming with the big stars, and if they had a close-up on my hand, I would do a second unit. So my goal was to try and, that's usually with the close-ups of my hand running down the hallway. So I would try and make it interesting or funny, and then they look at what they call the dailies, which every day they look at the film that was shot from the day before, and I'd hear from the director, "Oh, that stuff you did yesterday was great. We were laughing. It was so funny." Or so I was always trying to, and then they added scenes for me. Actually, they saw that the special effect was actually had an impact for the movie as a visual effect, and they added more and more scenes that weren't there in the first script. So.
And with the hand also, that led to another movie. What was the horror film you were in? It was
Idle Hands.
I actually saw that movie. I think I have seen it twice. Yeah, around Halloween, during the month of October, every day I would watch some horror film, and that was on my list this last year. I watched, and that was kind of a comedy.
It was a dark, black comedy. Yeah, they call it black comedy, I think, or dark comedy. Yep, it was. It was interesting because the director...
I didn't know that was you, though, at the time. That was...
Well, it's kind of a weird... Like, Thing is its own character, whereas this evil hand in Idle Hands, it was another actor, Devon Sawa, who played the character. His hand becomes evil, and then he cuts it off and throws it in the microwave, and it survives, and it runs and is on a killing spree. So that's where I take over, but it's more... So it's sort of the other character's hand, but it's the evil hand, a devil. So I'm sort of the devil hand, but it took the same. But the director called me and my agent said, "Oh, the director wants to use your hand in a horror movie." And I go, "Great." So I didn't even have to audition, but I'd met with him, and he said, "Oh, Thing's likable. Can you play evil?" And I go, "Yeah, I can play an evil hand." But inside, I'm laughing. Inside, driving
evil
home.
Hand.
Well, it's an evil hand other than it has no eyes. They put on, again, a couple hours of makeup to like this burn prosthetic hand skin. But again, it's in the context of the scene. I move more creepy and had long nails, when they put on me. And there's a scene where like one of the characters, a young actress, is trying to escape this hand that's chasing her down a duct, air conditioning duct. And she jams her shoe into a fan so that it doesn't spin, so she can crawl through it. And the hand discovers that and is going to pull out the shoe so that the fan spins and kills her.
Okay.
Well, I thought, what can I bring to this scene? So just before I pull my direction from the director is pull out the shoe so the fan can spin and kill the girl. Well, just before I pull out the shoe, I take my finger and I seductively stroke because it's a velvet shoe, and I kind of stroke it with my finger before I pull it out. Yeah. And it's just nuance like that. I try to think, okay, how can I convey an emotion? And I do that, and what it ties into is it's sort of the skills I learned doing a silent act. You have to communicate with no words. So it's sort of, in a way, it is acting. People who are actors says, "No, you're an actor." I go, "No, I don't know." But I guess I am in a sense in that there's internal dialogue going on. So even when I do my silent act, I'm thinking in my head, I'm producing these cards. I'm saying, "Oh, look at this, people. You're going to be amazed. Here's a fan." And that dialogue, I saw Denzel Washington, a great actor, of course, talking about this when he's on a close-up. He's internalizing his thought, and it reads through the camera. And I guess that's what I discovered doing my silent act, is I'm still conveying internal dialogue in my head of what I'm communicating, and it reads to the audience. I am communicating just without words. It's communicating.
I think you would have to. Have you thought about pursuing acting? I mean, if you were going to be doing something else other than magic, would acting be the course that you would take? I mean, have you found that, because you are inside and have been in studios for weeks at a time, is that something that it's like, hey, I'd like to do some more of this?
Well, I feel like I have the internal confidence now to try and do that, and I think and also there's a lot of roles. you have to let your life, I'm not 20 years old anymore, but I did the things I did at 20 as my magic act. And now I'm older, I'm going, I ran into a casting agent and she asked me if I was an actor. I said, no. I said, I'm a magician, but, how would I be cast? She said, oh, you'd be a great judge or a doctor or a thing. And I thought, oh, yeah, maybe I can go out for commercials. And
well, look at Steve Valentine, for an example. He's been able to balance perfectly between magic, and he's got a regular thing on the run that's a thing he does on the internet, plus teaching and going to conventions, as well as a movie career that he's been involved in. And so he's been and being able to balance that, which you have then as well. I just didn't know if that was something that you thought about doing more of.
It doesn't wake me up every day and drives me to do that, which is good. There's a lot of actors in Hollywood, and they're all fighting for the same role. So thank God I don't have that drive to because it would be very competitive, but maybe because I don't have that emotional tie, that I would probably maybe be good at it because I'm not emotionally tied into it. But I have a great respect for actors. I will look at a lot of podcasts and people talking about the acting process, and now that I've dipped my toe in that world, the tips make sense to me, when an actor, or I saw Michael Caine in a podcast thing the other day and talking about eye lines to the camera, and because filmmaking is also a technique like magic in that where to look at the camera line. It's first you got to convey the emotion as an actor, but then you're also working technically for the camera.
Because you can't look straight at the camera. You have to be looking beyond that or at some other focal point.
Right. And it was like that when I did that singing show. The thing I had, because the other people that were trying to fool the contestants, some of them were just graphic artists or a track star, but they had great voices. But they weren't good performers, but I thought, I'm a magician, so I actually have had a lot of time on stage. So when the director would say, okay, now Christopher, there's going to camera's going to swoop around you. You need to look at the camera when it's coming. I said, oh yeah, no problem. So I was comfortable in that environment, and I made it to actually all the people that the contestant was trying to get eliminated, and I made it to the very end. And sadly, he bet $60,000 that I was a good singer, and he lost all that money. He didn't lose it; he just didn't get it. He had acquired $60,000 by being right about all the other contestants, and then he was unsure. I made it to the very end, and I sang with Kelly Rowland. I get exposed whether I was good or bad by singing with the celebrity on the show, Kelly Rowland, who was from Destiny's Child, and so sadly he didn't win $60,000, but. And I thought people were going to yell at me, oh, there's the guy that made him lose it. And I go, but nobody.
Yeah. Going back to some of your creations and things about, developing the Torn Restored, that you've had a fascination with just the newspaper, I guess, for a long time, which then developed into the music, which was something was a passion, and a little at a time that different things all kind of made sense. How long did it take for that act to come together? No pun intended there.
Well, that's a good question, because it's
from the newspaper to score to musical score.
Well, when I was in this Magic Explorer Post, I learned the Gene Anderson newspaper tear. I think it's still the greatest paper tear to this day, and I do a lecture about that tear and why it's great. And I redesigned a gimmick.
The gimmick's brilliant.
And it's funny when I talked to Gene Anderson, and he saw my lecture at another convention years ago. And
at Colon? Were you at Abbotts?
I was in Colon, yes, at Abbotts. And he said to me, yeah, Christopher, when I developed that routine, I didn't do anything more. I never did anything to improve it or change it. And so I was doing that every night in that Triple Espresso show, and I had to figure out how to reset it quickly, because it was a pain doing shows every night. So, and it was pretty involved. The Gene Anderson method, you're rubber cementing a lot of gimmicks in and tearing them out.
It's hard to find rubber cement now, too. That's not something
Yeah, and you don't need to do it. So there was probably improvements since Gene Anderson, things that I have access to that didn't, glue sticks.
Plus the size of the newspaper and everything, too.
Size of newspaper, so... so I've torn a lot of paper in my day, and certainly a lot of music sheets, but the music sheet routine, so I've always been fascinated with paper tears. When I decided to put an act together, my inspirations were, ultimately my hero was Norm Nielsen. He was classy and sophisticated, and he did basically 3 routines, and, his cards and Miser's Dream and violin. So I structured my act around that because that was what I was drawn to. And so I said, okay, and I didn't have a lot of money working at the magic shop. And I go, okay, I'll pick cards, manipulation, I'll do a torn and restored, and I'll do a floating, I'll do a zombie. So those were just pick 3 tricks. That's the thing I'll give advice to anybody working on Aggie. First, hardest thing to do, you just got to commit, pick 3 tricks. So I picked 3 different effects.
That's a great idea. And then let the rest kind of build around it.
Then you got to do the hard work. I'm going to tell you something I didn't. Here's what's good about this podcast is that I have so much to talk about that I didn't even touch, and I have notes that I can now disperse on this podcast for you that I didn't get to talk about yesterday because I ran out of time. But there's a great, well, I'll tell you now right now so I don't forget. There's a couple of great books that I was always inspired by. One was called a Whack on the Side of the Head. It was a creative book on how to think. It was on a magic book, but how to think creatively. And he had a second book called A Kick in the Seat in the Pants. So A Whack on the Side of the Head. His second book was called A Kick in the Seat in the Pants. And that was a great book. I'll tell you why.
Who wrote it?
His name's got a, I knew you were going to ask me.
I have Kick in the Seat in the Pants.
It's like Roger von Osterberg or something.
Okay.
It's a weird last name. So it's Roger von something, I think. But what was at least a little inspiring for me was in the Kick in the Seat of the Pants. It was a book to help motivate you to be creative. So he defined that there's 4 hats you have to wear. I may not be remembering this exactly, but essentially there was 4 hats. There's the explorer hat, and I go, when you're creating something, you explore ideas. Then there's the artist hat. You put on the artist hat next, and you have to make the artistic decisions. Oh, I'm going to do this, and then you pick the judge hat, where you have to make judge decisions on stuff. And the last hat is the warrior hat, where you have to fight to create this stuff. And it just rang true for me, because what happens is when you allow your artist in you to affect you, you start spinning your wheels. You don't get ahead. And the hardest thing is to move through the people that are successful. David Copperfield. I work for David Copperfield. That's another 2-hour podcast I can talk to you about. But
on his specials, I mean, you weren't working like in the museum. You were like touring with him.
No. Well, I worked. The first time David Copperfield went to Las Vegas, he was co-headlining, and I was 20 years old.
Wow,
and
what an experience!
I worked. Yeah, it was a great experience.
Did Don Wayne help you get that job?
No, this was ironically.
I know you and Don were good friends.
We were very good friends. This was before I really knew Don Wayne, and I was 20. And again, it's amazing that this all connects back to the SAM, because I became friends with a guy named John Silver, who was in the same magic club, young person magic club, and I don't know how he did it, but somehow he befriended David Copperfield and had a job for David. And then he called me up and said, hey, David's going to Vegas for the first time. We need more people. Do you want to work with us? I go, yeah, that would be great. So I went to Vegas as a 20-year-old, assembling all the illusions, running them during the show. And at the time, these were all the illusions. Basically, David only had his TV specials. That was the predominant, every year was creating. So
I wonder if those props were owned by the TV studio or if he owned them.
No, he definitely owned all of them, because they were the same props. That, so however he structured his deal, he owned all that stuff. So we were running all the Jewel Thief and Orange Lemonade Canary and Floating Ferrari, Tower Illusion, everything, all the early TV specials he was doing live in Las Vegas with a live orchestra. Fantastic. I was there a couple weeks before to rehearse, and the week before, this was at the Hilton Hotel. Now it's called Westgate, but it was originally the Hilton Hotel. Jen Kramer's there now.
Jen Kramer, great job, great show there.
And it's weird. I went to see Jen Kramer when I was working at the Ahern in Las Vegas a year ago, and I hadn't been back to that hotel since I'd worked for David, and I was there early, so I walked into the stage area where the stage was, and they were showing big sports events on the big screen TV was playing at the time. But I thought, oh wow, this is when the first time I went to Vegas. But a week before I was there early before David started, to rehearse, but I saw Doug Henning live with Tony Orlando. That was my first Vegas show. Saw Doug Henning there.
Wow, great first show.
Then John Silver and he knew Marvin Roy, and he was performing at the Tropicana Follies Bergère show. So we went and I saw Marvin Roy live there with a live orchestra, early Vegas days. We would go over to Gary Darwin's Magic Club meeting. You see Siegfried and all these great magic people in Vegas. Yeah. So I was, now when I look back at it, I go, oh, I was
in the epicenter
of a really golden time of magic.
Yeah.
It was an amazing time. So that was great. And then, so Copperfield was co-headlining with Bill Cosby. So he would perform, and then Bill would go in front of the curtain, sit on a bar stool and smoke a cigar and do his 45 minutes. But then I also worked for David at the MGM with singer Crystal Gale. He also worked with Natalie Cole. So this was a great, exciting time. And now I never worked so hard in my life. It was long, nonstop days. But I love magic. And there I am with David and working at Caesar's Palace. And for him, I went to some of the TV specials where I got to know Don Wayne. Working. And what was good about working for David is that it wasn't just getting him coffee. Like, I was a magic team person. So I would help, come up with ideas for him if we were in a brainstorming session, or I would learn all the magic, because David liked to direct his specials himself, but have a heavy hand in that. So because I looked like David a lot at the time.
I was going to say, you're about the same height, aren't you?
Same height and look,
build.
and thin, build, and I had...
What a coincidence.
So I would learn all the magic, and David could watch me do it as I walked through it on the set, or getting the props, at Johnny Gohn's, and yeah, it was a great. And then David, eventually, he was ready for the first time to go on tour, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, do you want to go on tour?" And I said, "Well, give me a day to think about it." And it was a really hard, soul-searching decision, but I had to make was, I said no to him, because as much as it was great, I knew it would have been sucked into that world, and I wouldn't have been working on my... Yeah, and you have at the time before Chris Kenner, there was a guy named Chris Giordano he wasn't a performing magician, so that was right up his alley. He's more of a show producer guy. And then he went on to do other stuff. I think he worked for Franco Dragone, and David then, started working with Chris Kenner. We did a side junction about Copperfield. But anyway, to go back to the 4 hats for the thing, just to tap out on that. So
I'm glad you're bringing this back full circle here.
The listener
come back
is that you get sabotage. It's very easy to self-sabotage, me included, on being stuck in the artist mode. Oh, it's not ready yet. It's not right. So you explore ideas you want to work on, and I can give tips on how to do that. You explore the ideas, then you make artistic decisions. Then you have to make, or maybe, I don't know if the maybe the order that you're judging which decision, then you make artistic decisions, and then you got to drop all those other hats, and you got to be the warrior to get it on stage, birth it. I call it birthing the magic. It's so hard to do. But once you birth the baby can now be fed and grows and gets bigger and stronger. But until that sucker's birth, and the hardest thing is just getting over that hump. So when I did the Magic Castle, I was doing routines recently, and I did 30 minutes. I did a couple routines that I'd never performed for a live audience ever before. Now I rehearse the hell out of them at home in front of a mirror and scripting and ideas. So I did the homework and rehearsed it. But ultimately, you have to do something for the first time somewhere. But once you get it out, once you get the first time out, the next one becomes a little bit easier, I promise you. And then you start to finesse it. Oh, yeah, we're on so many tangents. It's fantastic, though. Music sheet. So we went on a tangent about how they created.
Yes.
So I picked the 3 things. Then my job now was to get them out there. So here's what I had a vision for. So now I had 3 different effects for the audience, right? Styles. But I had in my head, I always liked chairs and dancers with chairs and cabaret dancers.
Right.
So it was always intriguing to me. So I had this vision, probably from seeing a dancer or something do it, straddling a chair in a spotlight.
That iconic picture from Cabaret.
Cabaret, yeah. That always burned in my brain. And I never even had, I still to this day have never seen Cabaret, but that poster image.
My favorite musical.
I want to see it, and I'll probably get a lot out of it. Either I'll be very disappointed because it's not what I think it is, or I'll be...
It's changed a lot. I saw the one in first iteration with Joel Grey back in the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but that imagery stuck in my brain. The derby hat and the chair and the thing.
Yeah, sure.
So ironically, and here's the thing about creating. You can create a lot of different ways. You can say, oh, here's a piece of music I love. I want to figure out a trick to this. You can start with a trick, and I love this trick, and let me bring something to it. Start with a prop, an object that you like. And so the chair, I want to sit on there. I had a mood I wanted to create. So that was my impetus for that. But then I said, okay, I'll do a tone restore. That's good. A tone restore is a simple effect. Tear it up. And then I said to myself, you know what, tearing, I said, there's two things. One, I wanted to be like Norm Nielsen, who's classy. And newspapers aren't classy in theory. They're kind of ugly.
Yeah, kind of dirty a little bit. Yeah.
Dirty a little bit. So I said, oh, what can I loved the Trick Brain at the time. And it basically...
Great book.
Its process was basically, have all these objects and then you randomly combine them with effects. It's an okay process. I've been working on for years a similar process, but more not so random, right? So, because I always feel like the object kind of helps define what you're going to do with it. Not always, but sort of in general. So anyway, so I said, newspaper, what can I use? Oh, music sheet, that's classy. But paper tearing is boring. How do I make it interesting? Oh, what if the music stops and blah, blah, blah. So, but I told this in my lecture. When I first performed it to audition for the Magic Castle to work there, the audience laughed. And I came off stage after the audition for this live audience, and I was upset, and because they were laughing. And Michael Weber came back, and he said, "Oh, that music sheet routine's great." I go, "What are you talking about? They're laughing." And he said, "No, it's great." And I had to reframe my own thinking to go, "Oh, it's not a ballad like I thought it was. It's a romantic comedy. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is actually good." So the bigger point of me telling all this is that it's a very mystical, magical thing, the art of creation. And I remember seeing an interview with a writer, and the writer wrote a book and said, "I cried at the end when the character died." And I thought, but you're the writer. You're the one who made him die. Why are they? I'm thinking to myself. And then as I learned and heard them, I'm going like, no, you know what? Somehow we just become conduits. And so that writer was a conduit through whatever guiding creative force, and the evolution of that character in the book that she was writing, that was the fate of that character. That even though she didn't intend it in the beginning, that's what it was. So I say that with the idea that the routines that you self-create may not be what you think you want in your head. Sometimes they are. Sometimes you create the very vision that you have. But sometimes they become something bigger or better than you realize. And that's the creation of the music sheet. And there's so many other details.
Take on their own life, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that they become, it's sort of like the movie making process. I would talk to the nobody wants to make a bad movie. Yeah. You get the best script you can, the best directors you can, the best music accompaniment you can, but there are still movies that are flops. And it's because you get all the ingredients, but the ingredients didn't make a beautiful cake. And then sometimes you have very few, 3 ingredients, and it turns into something great.
True.
So it's the beauty and agony of creation, of art, whether it's music, writing, magic, songwriting. When Michael Jackson, all of them want to have a number one hit each and every time, but if it was easy to make a number one hit, everybody would be doing it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I kind of laugh at the idea, not in a malicious way, but I laugh at the idea when somebody says, "Oh, I need to make a viral video." Well,
it may or may not be.
Yeah, videos become viral. You say, conceptually, the idea intellectually makes sense. Oh, I need to create a viral video to have a hit. Well, we all want to do viral videos. Sure. But that's not how they happen. They don't go viral because sometimes, 1 in a million maybe says, "I'm going to make a viral," and it is viral. But they become...
Yeah, like we say, we want to do a hit movie. Of course you want a hit movie. Or I want to buy a bestseller in New York. Of course you do. Right.
And so you say, how did that movie fail? Why did that song? It's just the nature of the beast that when you look at the credits of a movie, I'm amazed every time more and more now, when those credits roll, how many people involved in making a movie?
More and more.
And some that don't even have their credits in there. It's every
I hadn't thought
little...
about all that. Those people, true.
And so all those people trying to make something, and you think, wow, the challenges. Movie making is a really...
Well, going back, as we start to conclude here a little bit, you were talking about the very first thing. You said, I can give you a few tips for the exploring portion of it.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, we can talk about that. So, yeah, we'll just sort of touch on it a little bit. That there's, as I say about making money, there's a million ways to make $1 million. And it's the same thing with creating. Ultimately, and this is hard, I'll be honest with you, it's hard for me. And that's why deadlines are good. And when I booked the Magic Castle to do that time, I was forced, the artist in me that said, I don't know if that trick's right. Oh, I don't know, Christopher. And I kept dragging my feet. But the taskmaster that knew he was booked said, I don't care, artist. You go sit in the corner and cry all you want. We're picking this trick and we're going to make it work. Because at some point, deadlines force you into action.
A good point.
And it's the same thing. I call them, it's hard to do. I'm getting better at it. Deadlines are super helpful. When you have a deadline and you have to deliver, it's sink or swim. And sort of that artist gets pushed in the corner pretty fast when you're having deadlines. But also, you can do it, you got to what I call create self-imposed restrictions. Restrictions are beautiful things. Sometimes you don't want a lot of choices because you say, okay, I'm going to create a 1-minute opener for my act. And maybe because you have a need for that or you think that might be useful for you. I'm going to create an audience participation bit. I'm going to create a silent routine. You need to put boxes so your brain can start to frame up something. And then, so that's first, barriers are helpful. Then you say, you can create 1 million ways. Here's a trick I always think is I'm intrigued with. Here's some music I love. Here's a premise I love. Do you want it to be funny? Like when I had the chair, I wanted a moody piece. So that was enough of a thing to dive into. And I sadly, before Max Maven passed, I had some lunch with him. And we were talking. I said, how do you come up with material, Max? And he said, it was very insightful and it stuck in my brain. It's one of the last conversations I had with him. And he said, well, it's sort of like, sometimes it's like going to a store to buy a suit. And you try on a jacket you think is going to fit perfectly and it doesn't fit. And then you find another one that it fits perfectly. And that's the one you wear. And I go, oh, that's a really great analogy. Like you've got to try, sometimes I try and intellectualize routines. Like, oh, is this good for me? Or what's wrong with this? And sometimes you just got to put them on and try them and discover like, oh, this trick doesn't work for me where it works for somebody else. Or this works better than I thought. You don't know. Sometimes you can't know. Like this music sheet routine. The last thing I thought that was going to be was a trademark piece for me. And now I've torn thousands and thousands of pieces of paper. And it's a really hard trick to do because I'm sitting on a chair. I'm tearing paper for 2 minutes with no magic happening. It's terrifying. It's not like I'm producing a bird every 20 seconds. I'm tearing paper. But yet that became a emotional piece for the audience that connected to me. And then when it restores and I hand it out, somehow I didn't anticipate that. But that's the nature of life. Keep creating, and some are going to be great, and some are going to not be great, and
just keep at it. So that's part of the exploring part of it.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah. Don't give up. Keep at it and fail and learn from that. There are no there's these great books. I always like to read books on inspiration and stuff. And some of these businesses say, if you're not failing enough, you're not successful. And so that's stuck in my head. Don't think failure as a negative. Take it as, oh, I'm not failing enough to be successful.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying enough stuff.
You need to overcome that and realize, okay, well, that's one down. I think the same thing with Edison. I think he had some sort of a famous quote that had to do with
10,000 things, and now I know what doesn't work or whatever. Yeah, and it's like I say with the singing, I thought everyone's going to be laughing at me. If you do a trick on stage, or like you're talking about Darren Brown, if you do a trick and you fail, no one's really thinking about you. Mm-hmm. Just it's your journey, your life journey. And as Steve Martin says, when he says in his book, it's great. He says that people always come up to him and say, oh, how do I get an agent? He says, be so good that they notice you. And it's really true, especially in the magic world. It's a pretty small world. When there's somebody doing something really innovative and interesting, it gets out. You hear about that. Oh, have you seen that guy do the thing? Have you seen that guy in China do this thing? Oh, have you seen Yu Ho Jin do the bang bang bang?
Oh boy, yeah.
Like because we're hungry. We want something new.
Yeah.
We want to see the new.
Yeah.
Root for the new stuff, right? So.
Well, it's true. Yeah, you see Matt King and Jeff Hobson and some people who are doing something that's very original. And you think, okay, I want to do that.
Right.
Well, they've already developed that. Then they are who they are. You should be who you are.
Right, and it's okay. Yeah, 100%. But it's a hard thing to do that in the beginning because you have no confidence. You copy people, and I did it probably as a kid. Certainly,
I think everybody did. To begin with, got to get started.
It just gives you a confidence in feeling like it's false confidence, but it's a confidence in that. Oh, this works because you saw somebody else, but it works because what they brought to it. And so at least gives you, but it's sort of like, I go, well, it's okay. It's like an actor learning lines that are a play that you learn about. Here's the thing with Bill, I mean to tap it out on this, is like Bill Arnold. I had to learn Bill Arnold's comedy magic act, and he's a short, completely different looking than me, and his type of approach to comedy, and he's brilliant and hilarious. I had to learn it for the play, because it was like, everybody had to learn that same act. So it could be regimented, anybody coming in. But I couldn't do it like him. I had to find my way. Now I got big laughs, and it was a rush to go, oh, I didn't even write this, and I'm getting laughs. An actor playing that role of this character. But I had to still do it in the way that felt right for me.
Yeah.
Somehow I had to learn. Because the thing that I had to overcome was like the first time because I'm not an actor. I think what acting schools do is when you're doing classes, you're learning how to be angry or sad. And I go, I've never had to express that as a magician. So when I had to be angry on stage, the audience was terrified of me. I could feel them. They were afraid because I was like a little nuts. And then I realized, oh, okay. I expressed it as a guy telling a story. I thought, because this was my lack of acting training, I thought, if I'm telling my friend a story about being stuck on the freeway and my car broke down, I'm telling the story and relating it. I'm not angry at him. He's seeing my frustration. So
correct. He's seeing the result
It's subtle differences that I learned. So anyway, the point is, even if you're doing somebody else's routine, they're still not going to work the same for you, but it's a good way to try on the coat.
You look back at all the classic artists. I mean, Salvador Dali had people who his students would actually replicate his paintings exactly, and then they would learn their own style from there.
Right.
But you had to start with the master who you would clone, try to be like that person, because not only have they got success, but you kind of learn a style, and then you think, okay, well, I can do that a little bit differently, and then that kind of completely evolves into something, a new reality.
Right, and you're learning a technique, there's so many things I can talk to you about. You spur on the thing. Anyway.
Running short of time here.
Well, it's like the Robert Houdin has this famous quote, a magician is an actor playing the part of magician. And I always kind of disagree with that, but it depends on the context in which you read it. On some level, what he's saying is we don't have real magic powers. True. But I also feel like a magician, it's no different than a doctor or a lawyer. We have skills and techniques we train and work on. And I used to watch this comedy show, comedy at the Improv or something, and they would always have a celebrity host come out and do they've obviously learned some comedy writer, but they were terrible comedians because they're great actors, but just learning the jokes. So the point is, magicians to me have skills. And so even if you're learning a trick that exists, it's training. You're even if you're doing a trick somebody's done, you're still like, okay, how does this work for me? The technique of it. When bad lines happen, when the people say, oh, that line's such a hack line, whatever the line is, there's dozens of them. The only reason they become hack is because the person performing them, the original guy that said that line, whatever the line was, probably was a brilliant line for that guy. And then people copy the line, but they're not good at, they're not saying the line in the same context as the original guy did it. So the line is not necessarily bad. It just doesn't fit the context of the person copying that line, and then it becomes a hack line because everyone's doing it. But anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, as we do wrap up, you've
Yes.
kind of reflected a lot back on your life then as well. That I want to ask kind of a last question here about what do you plan to do from here out? What is like a future for Christopher Hart?
Well, I'm figuring out who I am at this point in my life. Yeah. And it's opening up new markets. I still love magic. It's having the courage to say, all right, well, maybe I'm Mike Mark. I feel like the world guides me. When I don't listen to the voice that says, oh, I should work on talk material, eventually the God power and the world says, all right, well, I'm going to implode the Tropicana and every hotel, so you can't do your silent act anymore. You're going to be forced to do a talk act. Okay, so we should listen to the little voices sooner, so I'm not playing catch up. But it's kind of exciting. I identified as my act, as I thought, who am I without my act? This is Christopher Hart. And now my mantra, I'm going to expose a weakness in me, but my mantra for the year or two has been, I'm more than my act. I'm not, because you can identify with your act and then you're afraid to try new stuff because you don't want to look like a filler, because people give you, pats on the back for these couple routines and then you're going, oh, God, I got to duplicate that. It's a lot of pressure, right? But I'm saying, okay, I'm allowed to do whatever I want. No one's caring.
Right.
I can fail and I'm not going to die and
right.
And so it's actually exciting. The creative.
It is exciting.
There's so many creative ideas that I want to do, and I'm excited to do.
The world's your oyster still.
Yeah.
Well, and then that would be my last question about what is your magic word or phrase? What's pretty? What do you live by?
I will tell you what. I'll tell you what. Well, my newest one, to be perfectly honest with you, is something I actually heard. He's a little kind of a controversial figure in some ways, but Elon Musk. I heard this talked about Elon Musk and Steve Jobs apparently had this phrase of it's called no noise. It's so easy to get distracted. And we all do it. Grab it, you're on Facebook and you're down all these rabbit holes. Sure. And I'm becoming self-aware of how much time I waste under what I think is I'm researching. Oh, let me look at this. At some point, I say my mantra is, am I doing the work? And the work is, you got to pick a trick, get up every day and work on that trick. Even if it's in small increments of time. And there's a great phrase that a yoga teacher thing I used to watch a video, and he said, strength builds in increments. And when I was working on Kevin James' Floating Rose years ago, it kept failing. I couldn't get it to work. I was so frustrated. And then I said, okay, let me just do 15 minutes a day. That's my only requirement, 15 minutes a day. And it's the power of small allotments of time. And it's not so much I'm giving advice to other people. I'm saying things that I'm learning for myself.
Yes.
Small allotments of time. They don't have to be 4-hour sessions working on the past. It's ridiculous. Strength builds in increments. A little bit each and every day builds that muscle stronger and stronger. And it's really true. When I was working for the castle, trying to get ready, for the past few months, I said, this is a new trick. And every time I saw it sitting on the table, I thought, oh, okay. And I picked it up and I went through it. It took 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes. And you do it the next day. And then that starts to build up. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the week, I'm familiar with stuff or something happened that I didn't anticipate happening. And
you build the muscle memory too.
Build the muscle memory, right. So it becomes intuitive. Go ahead, yes.
So summing that up would be, what would you say? Just to what?
Well, just, I would say, I relate to a lot of smart people that Steve Jobs apparently said he can only work at three things at a time. So they would have long lists, but at some point you got to have the courage to commit. Even if you end up failing at it, you got to commit to something, and the failure will guide you to maybe what you're supposed to be doing. You got to pick something. It's another thing, mantra I try and listen to. It's hard to listen to. Don't compare yourself to other people. It's easy to go down a lot of it depends what you want. You can be whatever you want in magic. I think magic's a big play field. If all you want to do, if you've got a regular job and you're making a lot of money and you don't have to worry about paying your bills, and you want to be you want to learn every 4 ace trick,
Go for it.
Go for whatever makes. I only come at from the perspective and point of view, and it doesn't have to be for everybody. My only point of view is I was trying to be a working professional magician, and so those constraints are good and bad. When I was a hobbyist magician, I could work on anything.
Yeah.
When you're a professional, you, as you know, have to deliver under the conditions. So there's two types of approaches. This is like my whole lecture I never gave yesterday. This is so funny that we're doing this podcast. There's two approaches in my mind. Build it and they will come. That's like a David Copperfield, maybe a Franz Ferrari. I'm going to build big things, and I have so much faith in myself that the market will appear. That's a beautiful philosophy and approach. I don't have the courage for that. Maybe now I do. Maybe. I think I do now because I have more security and financial security that I can take some risks. But my approach was always find your market, build for the market. I want to be in a review show, so I built the 12-minute act for a review show. And then when reviews started changing, then 12 minutes could work in other countries. So it was fine. But, if you're a trade show market, close-up guy at a restaurant market, strolling market, kid show market, every one of those markets has different demands and needs, and they all necessarily. My act is pretty versatile, but still, it's not going to work in every single market.
Right.
But so pick your market. It depends on what and even if you're not making money at it, it's still a market. I'm going to do a newspaper tear at my company party. My Christmas party, even if that's your only goal. If you you're working for whatever big company and they have an annual Christmas party, I encourage you, I challenge you to say, okay, I'm terrified to perform, magic's my hobby. Let me do one trick at my company party. There's a place you can do it. Somewhere, take advantage of the opportunities. When it makes the other thing, God, I love that I'm doing this talk with you because all the things I didn't talk about yesterday, you're getting the benefit, and now they're recorded. I always get a little crazy when I see these things sometimes posted. It says, can you believe this guy's, asking for a magician for $75? How dare they? And I think, well, don't beat that guy up. He doesn't know the market, and maybe that's all they can afford.
True.
And guess what? You don't have to do the gig. So just ignore it and move on in your life. But guess what? There's also an opportunity there for someone that wants to try out a trick, and you're going to get $75 to cover your gas and buy you dinner after.
Right. And experience.
Experience, because you can't learn if you're not doing it for people. And then guess what? Maybe there's 100 people at this little family reunion that they want to pay $75 for, and you get to try a trick out for 30 times for people, learn, and hand out your business card.
Yep. Could lead to other things.
I mean,
so many different advantages.
So don't
diss somebody who is.
Don't. Just think about what it can do for you. There's advantages. There's opportunities everywhere. Don't connect it to like a negative. That's, sometimes I see them, I go, wow, I'll do the gig for $75. I want to try out this trick.
Yeah.
I'm going to get paid $75 to go try out a trick.
Try out something brand new, right?
Holy hell.
Right,
Yeah. So I'm not saying go do $75 gigs, but I'm saying they're not bad. There's opportunities in everything. And you're an adult. You decide because the other thing related to that is, this is where I learned I'm telling you things I learned my lessons on. When I was first doing my act, and somebody offered me $150. And I talked to my friend, he only has $150. My friend said, $150, don't do that. And I said no to the guy. And 3 days later, I got another call for another gig for $150. And I said to myself, I'm not losing this gig. I'm not, screw that. My friend's not paying my light bill.
Yeah.
And he tells me not to do the gig. And so I never stopped listening to that guy. He's a friend, but I'm not getting financial advice from him because he's not paying my light bill. I'm paying my light bill.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I'm telling you now, 35, 40 years later, this lesson has stuck with me because I said, I would have had $300 that week. My rent at the time was $225. But I turned down $150 because my friend thought, he's worth more. I'm like, no, screw you. So take everything till you don't have to take it.
Yeah.
I think Pendulette talks about that. You take everything you possibly can until you don't have the time, or there's so many other offers coming in that, no, I can't take that. I've got this.
Good advice.
You know what? Matches, you you're all the different places on the mountain. Just keep climbing. It's one rung at a time. You're not going to get from the bottom rung to the top rung. The ladder has steps for that reason. Every trick, learn, absorb.
Wow. Okay.
Ignore your friends. Listen to your friends.
Listen to the good advice. Yeah.
Trust your gut.
Well, thank you very much. Wow, there's a lot of gold in there that you had said, and I appreciate the time, and I can't believe it went so fast, and there's so much more that we can talk about for another hour or two quite easily. I know.
Well, you told me it was going to be like an hour, and I've done hour podcasts on film making and stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, God, do I have enough to talk about? And now I feel like we hardly scratched the surface.
Hardly. I told you it's going to go very fast. And I'm sure the listeners are thinking the same thing. It's like, gosh, we should have Christopher back. There's so much more that you guys can talk about. And it's easy, I think, also when you're friends with somebody, and you can kind of open up and a little bit, you don't feel like that, whatever. Well, listen, Chris, I appreciate that very much. You've been a great guest, and I want to thank you for joining us. And so I think we're going to start to wrap up over here then now. So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Christopher Hart. This is Scotty out. Thank you very much, Chris, for being my guest this week. It's been a joy just to have a chance to sit down and revisit with you after all these years and to spend some good quality time there. Thank you very much. And I know the listeners appreciated all that they had to hear there, too. Well, we did go a little bit longer than normally. I like to take this right about an hour, and this has been a little over that for now. So anyhow, I want everyone to, if you get a chance, to subscribe to our pod letter. So if you go to the magicwordpodcast.com, you'll see a little pop-up there. Please join the pod letter so you can keep up to date with what's going on from week to week. And we've got this next week, we'll be going to the Texas Association of Magicians convention in Houston, and I'm looking forward to that for one obvious reason is I'm going to be the guest of honor. So it's kind of cool that I'll be honored there along with my friend Scott Hollingsworth. And then the Legend of Magic Award will be given to my other good friend, Mr. Bill Merlin Palmer. So if you get a chance to join us in Houston this between September the 4th and the 7th, please come and join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. There will be a podcast coming out on probably that Saturday the 5th, and then another one that'll be coming out on the 7th. So I'm planning on having two separate podcasts to be reports of those days of what's been going on. And in case you can't make it, but if you do, you even get to hear some things that perhaps you may have missed while you were at the convention. So anyhow, until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember that the ladder has rungs on it for a reason. So take each step and don't miss one. This is Scotty out.